Hare Krishna, welcome to all of you. This session, the introduction of Bhagavad Gita. So let's start with prayers. Om Ajnanaatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Veda Deshatarine. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, thank you all very much for joining today's session. So before going into the session, I wanted to ask if this is the first, your first introduction for Bhagavad Gita, and this is the first class that you're attending. So please write your name in the chat box. So we want to reach out to you personally and discuss a few things, to ask some feedback, and we want to make it more understandable by totally new people. So your feedback will be very valuable. Also, you can share this with your friends and relatives who are interested. Anytime they can join. Although this is an 8-week course, any week, if you're attending the whole 8 weeks, it's going to make much of a sense, because you will get an overall idea. But still, if you have missed a few sessions, still they can take part. They can join from wherever they are. So I request you to please write your name in the chat box. So Prithvilasni Mataji, maybe we can make a note of it, and then we can contact them later.
Yeah, we just want the name of the adults. So if the adults' names are given, that would be good.
Yeah. So this session is for adults, and we want you to ask more questions. Doesn't matter whichever questions you have in your mind, you can ask. Whatever we can, we will answer, and if not, we can get answers from senior devotees, and we can discuss here. So since this is designed for adults, I request the kids to be on mute if at all you're there. Okay, so the last 2 sessions, just to give brief review. So we saw what is Bhagavad Gita, and also what is not Bhagavad Gita. What do we get by reading Bhagavad Gita, and famous misconceptions about Bhagavad Gita, who should read it, and what they get about it. So we discussed all this in the first session. And in the second session, we discussed about Gita Mahatmya, the glories of reading Bhagavad Gita as told by Sri Shankaracharya, and also why Bhagavad Gita is a book that's for not only human beings but all living entities. So there is nothing sectarian in this book. Although it is widely known as a holy book of Hindus, you'll be very surprised to find that there is not one word Hindu in any of the literatures, and especially in Bhagavad Gita. So we discussed about how it is Bhagavad Gita talks about Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana means that which eternal. Dharma is the intrinsic, inseparable property of the eternal living entity. So we continue to live forever. That is the subject matter of Jiva. So we will be discussing more on that. So Srila Prabhupada explained very nicely about how the eternal living entity's intrinsic quality is its ability to do service, to render service. So the concept, the propensity to render service, that cannot be separated from an eternal living entity, that is dharma. So Bhagavad Gita teaches us how to dovetail or channelize this sense of doing service to to the eternal Supreme Lord, and we learned that how we are part and parcel of the Supreme Whole. That is the first hymn of Isopanishad. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. So we are all belonging to the complete whole. From the complete whole, many complete manifestations are emanating, which are complete in themselves. Even though so many complete parts emanate from the complete whole, the complete whole remains complete always. So this is how Upanishads speak very enigmatically, and Bhagavad Gita is also called Gita Upanishad, and this Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all the Vedas. So in this yuga, it is not possible because we don't have so many things that is required for spiritual education. So all that we have left is with Bhagavad Gita, but that is enough. So if we read this one book with sincerity and with all seriousness again and again and again, then we are sure to achieve the goal of life. So let's go into session 3 now. So what is the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita? So this is if you have, we are following this book, Bhagavad Gita, as it is by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So this book has been translated into over 120 languages all around the world, and there are very good reviews. It's also used in the universities as a guide book for meditation and scientific analysis of the soul. And so
Actually, your voice is fading away. Try to keep close.
okay. Is this okay now?
Yeah, this is good.
This is good. Okay. So, so we'll be using this book and we'll be reading from this book. So this is not a course to just give you a presentation, but what we are trying to share is that like how to use this book every day in your life. So if you have the book, please open it. If you don't have the book, if you send us a message, we would try to send you a copy. With the other 3 books that will also be eventually used in this course of time. So all these things that Preeti Vilasini Mataji very nicely made this slides, they're all from the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita. So this is there in page number 7, introduction. If you all have the book, and I've also or we can read from here also. So what is a subject matter of Bhagavad Gita? Because Srila Prabhupada gave us this analytical understanding of Bhagavad Gita based on its 5 subject matters, it becomes all the 700 shlokas can be categorized into one, belonging to one of these 5 subject matters of Bhagavad Gita, or a shloka that is explaining the interrelationship between these 5 subject matters of Bhagavad Gita. So this is like a philosophical overview of the Bhagavad Gita. So let us read from this. So the subject of the Bhagavad Gita entails the comprehension of 5 basic truths. First of all, the science of God is explained, and then the constitutional position of the living entities, jivas. There is Ishvara, which means the controller, and there are jivas, the living entities, which are controlled. If a living entity says that he is not controlled, but that he is free, then he is insane. So this may look like a heavy statement, but this is true. How it is true, we will read in depth in Bhagavad Gita. But we know that we want to do so many things, but we are not able to do whatever we want to. For example, people who would ever imagine that the humankind will be like healthcare workers. We will go around wearing masks, and we are afraid to see each other, touch each other, go out anywhere. It's like the total world is in a panic situation. Like how we have panicked animals for years and years together, not thinking that they also have feelings, and we are responsible for that. We have herded the animals out of their habitats, and we have built houses there. We have crushed beetles and insects and killed animals left, right, center for our own well-being. But now it is our turn to feel
There
what.
is no audio. You have to keep close.
Okay, is this okay now?
No.
No.
Headphones, Mataji.
Yeah, let me check. Am I audible now?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, but let's see how far it goes. I will. I think I may need a headphone. A headphone. Headphone. Okay. So let's see how it goes. Am I clear now?
Let it go, Mataji.
It's not clear?
Now it's
Now
okay.
it is good.
Okay, it's on and off.
Mataji, it's going in and out. Yeah, the audio is going in and out, Mataji.
Give me a second. I'll pick up the headphones. Now it's okay? Up. Is it clear now?
Yes.
Yes, Mataji.
Okay. So we can see that we are always controlled, but sometimes we don't realize this, that we are controlled. We thought that, we can book a ticket, we can go anywhere in the world for a vacation, we can do whatever we want. No. Now, at least at this point of time, this statement makes a lot of sense, that the living entity, if he says that he's not controlled, but that he's free, then he's insane. Basically, when Bhagavad Gita talks about the gross body and the subtle body and the mind and the senses, then it will be even more clear how we are totally under the control. So he's explaining the science of God is first explained. That means Ishvara. And the second thing is about Jiva. Jiva means that which lives. And Ishvara is a controller, and Jiva are the living entities which are controlled. So going on, the living being is controlled in every respect, at least in his conditioned life. So in the Bhagavad Gita, the subject matter deals with the Ishvara, the supreme controller, and the Jivas, the controlled living entities. Prakriti, and which is material nature, and time, the duration of existence of the whole universe, or the manifestation of material nature, and karma are also discussed. So the cosmic manifestation is full of different activities. So let me continue. All living entities are engaged in different activities. From Bhagavad Gita, we must learn what God is. That's the first topic. What the living entities are, what Prakriti is, what the cosmic manifestation is, and how it is controlled by time, and what the activities of the living entities are. So Prakriti, the material nature; time is called Kala, the duration of existence of the whole universe, or the manifestation of material nature, that we will discuss, and also about karma, activities, and their reaction. So these are the 5 basic tools. In English, Ishvara is God or Bhagavan, the science of God, and Jiva is the science of living entity. Jiva means one who lives forever. So there is no death for the living entity. And what are all the characteristics we will learn. And Prakriti is this material nature, how this nature is being created, how it is functioning, how we are embedding ourselves in this Prakriti and functioning. And then there is,
Your video is not seeing.
is it okay now?
Yes.
Okay, so there is Prakriti and then Kala, the time factor. What is the time factor and how are we controlled by time? How does time go in cyclic forms? And karma are the activities and the reactions. So these are the 5 basic truths. So what we are going to cover in this session is just an overview of these 5 basic truths and their interrelation between them. Okay, so this is also from the Bhagavad Gita, page number 9 or 10, I think. Okay, so Ishvara means controller. He's a supreme controller. And he's a supreme controller of what? 2 things. Controller of the living entities, that is ourselves, and controller of the material nature. So Srila Prabhupada very nicely writes, for instance, a child may think that an automobile is quite wonderful to be able to run without a horse or other animal pulling it, but a sane man knows the nature of the automobile's engineering arrangement. He always knows that behind the machinery there is a man, a driver. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the driver under whose direction everything is working. But he's such a driver and such a engineer that it's like a remote control. He makes this whole world work so perfectly, although he's sitting and remote and he's controlling. Just like when a person is making a robot that's completely looks like it is automated. But still, even though there is no driver in that robo, you don't see a man operating it, but you can see that there is a intelligent designer behind that robo that works as though there is no need of any human intervention. So that is how this material world is made. And what is the example he's giving here? When a car is running, when a very young child, like 1 year or 2 year, before they even start to talk, when they see the car, they think that the car is running on its own. But then a sane man knows that how it is running, what is happening. That's a whole department of engineering to learn about, and then it is driven by a driver. It is designed by an intelligent person. All this is understood by a sane person. So similarly, if we think about this world and we think that there is no intelligent designer, that means we are childish. So Bhagavad Gita gives us knowledge and gives us the eyes to see what is not apparently seen. So that is the first quality of Ishvara. The second thing is supremely conscious. So let's read this and then we can explain. The Lord is Kshetrajna, conscious, as is a living being. But the living being is conscious of his particular body, whereas the Lord is conscious of all bodies. Because he lives in the heart of every living being, he is conscious of the psychic movements of the particular jivas. We should not forget this. It is also explained that the Paramatma, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is living in everyone's heart as Ishvara, as a controller, and that he is giving directions for the living entity to act as he desires. So what does conscious means? So basically, conscious means to be aware. Something is going on. So we are aware of what's happening in our body. For example, if there is a small thread or something that is like in our skin, then we can feel, or a small ant. moves in some part of the body, we are conscious of the presence of the ant on the skin. So that means we are conscious of what's happening within this body, because we as a living entity are present in this body. But the Lord is conscious of all bodies. Why? Because he lives in the heart of every living entity, and he is called as Parama Atma. We are Atma and he is Paramatma, and he is present in everyone's heart as a Ishvara or the controller. So many times we say that, something within me told that I have to do this. Something stopped me from doing that. Okay. Or we say that I got lucky, or there is, coincidence. We may see that, I was thinking about it and then this happened. So all this is not, if we think that it is coincidence, it is lucky and something within it, that means we are childish. We are like a child telling that the car is running on its own. So here Krishna is explaining that since how we are conscious of our own body, Krishna is conscious of every other body, their psychic movements also. What we think before we know, the Lord in our heart knows. And he is known as a Paramatma, and he's what is he doing there? He is giving directions for the living entity to act as he desires according to the past activities. So yeah, the supreme controller, we know that, the car is there, but unless we don't need to see a driver to know that the car has a driver for it to function. So similarly, there is one person who is supremely conscious of everything. So we may ask then, who is seeing what we are doing, what we are thinking? No. Bhagavad Gita explains the whole system of how we are interconnected with the different parts of material nature to different controllers of material nature, that even what we think is being recorded. So that's how the karma system works very perfectly. So the second topic that is discussed here is about the jiva, the soul. Anybody wants to read? Anybody wants to volunteer to read the first note?
I can read.
Yes, ma'am.
Hare Krishna Mataji, can I read it?
Oh, Hare Krishna Mataji. Can we read?
Yes, Rachna Mataji.
Yeah.
Now the jivas or the living entities have been accepted by the Lord, as we will note in the later chapters, as his parts and parcels. A particle of gold is also gold. A drop of water from the ocean is also salty. And similarly, we, the living entities, being part and parcel of the Supreme Controller, Ishvara or Bhagavan. The Lord is Kshetrajna, consciousness, as a living being. But the living being is conscious of his particular body, whereas the Lord is conscious of all bodies.
Yeah, so this we saw before. Okay, so the jiva have been accepted by the Lord, as we will note in the later chapters, as his parts and parcels. So just like what is the example given here, a particle of gold is also gold. Like a drop of water is also water. But then a particle of gold is in quality the same as a gold mine in the gold, but the quantity is not the same. Similarly, a drop in the ocean is also having the quality of being salty like the ocean water, but the drop cannot drown a boat. That means the quantity is not the same. So we are all in quality equal to the Lord, but in quantity we are part and parcel or infinitesimal of the infinite Lord. So this is the second and the most important the lesson from Bhagavad Gita is that we are Jiva or we are Atma, and the Lord is Paramatma. We are conscious of only our bodies, while the Lord is conscious of all the bodies. So the third subject matter is Prakriti, and we'll see what is its relationship with Kala and Karma. Anyone wants to read the first two bulletin points, these are all directly taken from the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita. So you can find this in the introduction as well.
I want to read
Yeah, go ahead.
Prakriti and its relation with Kala and Karma. What is material nature? This is also explained in the Gita as inferior Prakriti. Inferior nature. The living entity is explained as the superior Prakriti. Prakriti is always under control, whether inferior or superior.
Okay, thank you.
First.
Material nature is called Prakriti. So Prakriti means nature, and then it is inferior nature. Yesterday in the Madhava class, we saw what is inferior nature and what is superior nature. Why something is called superior? Because the superior nature has some quality that the inferior nature doesn't have, or the superior nature exploits the inferior nature. So living entity is called as a superior Prakriti. Means this whole world is a combination of two things, life and matter. Matter cannot move on its own. Matter, like for example, this table, this computer, this book, they can't move on their own. They are achit, or they are not conscious. But they are being moved and used by the conscious living entity, so who is called as a superior Prakriti. So this is the first explanation. And what is the material nature consisting of? So that's the second bulletin point. Can anyone read? Indu Mataji.
Yeah, Brinda Mataji.
Yeah, I can read. Thank you. Hare Krishna Mataji. Material nature itself is constituted by three qualities: the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of ignorance. Above these modes, there is eternal time, and by a combination of these modes of nature and under the control and purview of eternal time, there are activities which are called karma. These activities are being carried out from time immemorial, and we are suffering or enjoying the fruits of our activities. For instance, suppose I am a businessman and have worked very hard with intelligence and have raised a great bank balance, then I am an enjoyer. But then, say I have lost all my money in business, then I am a sufferer. Similarly, in every field of life, we enjoy the results of our work, or we suffer the results. This is called karma.
Thank you, Mataji. So we can see that the material nature is constituted of three qualities: the mode of goodness, which is sattva guna, the mode of passion, which is raja guna, and the mode of ignorance, which is tamo guna. In hierarchy, the sattva guna is first, then the next best is raja guna, which is a mode of passion, and the least is the mode of ignorance or tamo guna. And so the material nature is consisting of these three modes. So what's happening? Above these modes, there is eternal time. And by the combination of these modes of nature and under the control and purview of eternal time, there are activities which are called karma. So this is the relationship between Prakriti, Kala, and Karma. So who's acting? Who's acting? That is the jiva, the individual soul, is acting, which is called karma, which is under the control of time, and he's acting because of being conditioned by the combination of these modes of material nature. It may sound overwhelming, but in essence, what Srila Prabhupada says is there are so many factors for a person to do an activity. And he's giving two examples that if I'm a businessman and I've worked very hard with intelligence and I have great amount of wealth, that means I have lots to enjoy. That means I'm an enjoyer. But on the other hand, if I lose everything, then I become a sufferer. So karma means we either enjoy or suffer. How much we enjoy, how much we suffer, that combination is based on our activities and the desires from the previous life or even in this life before. So it's how this complex system works. It looks complex, but when we break down into smaller portions, it's easy to understand. In essence, Prakriti is made up of three modes of material nature, and the Jiva is working. Whatever work he has done is completely recorded. That's called karma. And if it is good, he gets good results. If it is bad, he enjoys. If it is bad, something that he's not supposed to do, then he suffers. And all these activities are under the control of the eternal time. So that is in essence, the combination for these three things. And okay, so material nature, it is accepted as real but temporary. It is likened unto a cloud which moves across the sky, or the coming of the rainy season which nourishes grains. Means these two are not permanent. It keeps moving. As soon as the rainy season is over and as soon as the cloud goes away, all the crops which were nourished by the rain dry up. Similarly, this material manifestation takes place at a certain interval, stays for a while and then disappears. Such are the workings of Prakriti. So we see that the rainy season comes and then it goes. So during the rainy season, we see the rain, but after that, we don't see the rain. Similarly, when there is creation and before annihilation, we see the Prakriti, but then the material nature itself is eternal, but the manifestation of the material nature, like this cosmic universe, this creation and annihilation, between the period of creation and annihilation, we are able to see it, and after that there is a break and again it continues. So this material nature is called the inferior nature, and it is under the control of the Supreme Lord, not under the control of the living entity. So it manifests under certain interval of time, and then after that it stays unmanifests. So in essence, how the material nature works, if we understand, then we will make an effort that how to get out of this. First of all, we need to understand how I'm being controlled, what are the different factors. Then when we study the science of it, then when we know how to act in such a way that I can transcend these controlling factors, then we are considered to be, we have perfected the mission of the human life. So the last thing is Kala or time factor. So Kala is nothing but an energy of the Lord. So we would wonder whose time, how is the time running, and what is the day in and day out. It goes and years run and seasons run and the gray hair comes. Never from the old age can we come back to the youth, or never from the childhood we can go to old age. So there is a time for everything. So what Krishna is saying, that Kalosmi Aham, in chapter 11, text 32, he says that I am the time. And what does the time do? It destroys everything. Time destroys happiness, time destroys our suffering. Time is a healer. At the same time, time destroys our own body. We can see that how we were when we were 16-year-old is not the same when we are 60-year-old. So the time is deteriorating our body and it moves only unidirectionally. It's never from future to past. It can be in fiction books, but in reality, it doesn't happen. So that is about the time. And about the karma. So how karma is interrelated. Can anyone read the first two bullet points?
I can read, Mataji, if you want.
Okay, anybody else?
Can I?
Okay, Varun, yeah.
Okay. Actions pertaining to the development of material bodies of the living entities is called karma or fruitive activities. These activities were being carried out from time immemorial, and we are suffering or enjoying the fruits of our activities.
Yeah, thank you, Varun. The third point we covered. So, what is karma? How we are acting, that is producing our future. So it is very easy to understand. What we sow, we reap that. If we sow the seed of an orange, we get an orange fruit and not a apple fruit. Similarly, whatever we sow, so shall we reap. So that is the thing of karma. And then there is whatever, as we discussed, that if we do good, then we enjoy. If we do bad, we suffer. There is not an inch of mismanagement in this. If at all there is an inch of mismanagement, that is also corrected. That happened only once in Mandukya Muni's point, and that is also because Yamaraj had to come and take birth as Vidura. We see that in the Mahabharata. And I also remember an interesting story. A king wanted to make the ministers understand that many people argue, how do I know that I am suffering or enjoying the results of what action I did previously? So a king made an experiment. He called his three ministers and he gave three of them three huge bags, and he said that you go to the market and find out the best fruits and fill these sacks with fruits. So the first one was very sincere, and so he went around, he found out the best farmer for each different kind of a fruit, and he did his work and he filled his bag with them. The second one was little lazy, so he thought that there is still time, why do it? So what he did since he started late work, he could get only few of the good fruits, but the bag has to be filled. So the other things he filled with whatever he could get, some rotten fruits, some half ripe fruits, he just asked, he thought that the king wanted me to fill this bag, and my thing is over if I fill this bag and give it to the king. And the third one was a crooked fellow. So he thought, why waste effort and money and go and buy fruits and other things? So I'm just going to fill this bag with pebbles and some dry leaves, and whatever I get, twigs here and there, and if at all I get a fruit, then I put the fruit, and that's it, my job is done. So all the three came back to the king with their bags. Then the king said, I'm going to put you, all three of you, in quarantine for the next 1 month in 3 different rooms. So what you get to eat is what you collected in the sack. So then it was alarming. So you can see after a month of quarantine, the first person was healthy and happy. And the second person was kind of deceased, half deceased. He was because he had a mixture in his bag. Some were good, some were bad. The third person was totally emaciated and almost like dead, because he had all things that he couldn't eat and survive in that. So then the king explained, this is what your karma is. Whatever you fill your bag, that is what you're going to get to eat. It will not change. Whatever the other person, if the other person has the karma to buy a 5-bedroom house somewhere, then he gets it. And if we have a karma to get a 2-bedroom house somewhere, then we get it. So there is no point in, if we understand this concept, then we free ourselves from so much comparison in this world. So the point is, whatever it is, also another example is given is that if there are hundreds of cows, and if you release a calf, the calf will exactly go to the mother cow to drink the milk. So our karma is like that. So what we have given birth to, they will come to us exactly from wherever we are. So there are so many questions in this. It will all be addressed in detail. with the relevant shlokas in the coming sessions, but this is just the overview. But the system is designed in such a way that there is no degree of fault in that. I would like to also tell the story of Mandukya Muni. Mandukya Muni was staying in a king's out of the, in the forest in a king's ashram, and there were I think a bunch of thieves. They escaped and they ran to the forest, and they took shelter into this Muni's ashram without him knowing. So the soldiers came behind looking for them, and then they entered this Muni's ashram. They found them. So they understood that, they concluded that this Muni, the sage, has given shelter to those thieves, so he is also to be given punishment. So they went and told the king that somebody gave shelter. The king said they also have to get punishment, and they also have, he also has to be, they will make him sit on top of the spear. A spear. That was the punishment. So when he was, he was about to he went into the spear, and he was sitting and he was feeling the pain. At that time, just a few minutes after that, the king came running, and he apologized, and he said, "I'm so sorry. These people, they didn't realize that you are the sages. Neither did I investigate thoroughly. So please forgive me for this." The Muni or the Rishi, he didn't get angry with the king that why did you do that to me? So what he thought, what did I do in the previous life that I had to undergo this pain of suffering for these few minutes? So this is knowledge. So when we understand Bhagavad Gita, we see that we don't see the immediate cause as a cause of suffering and become angry at them. So since the Muni knows that and he has the power, so he immediately went to Yamaraj and he asked, "Tell me, what did I do?" Then Yamaraj said that when you were young, less than 5 years old, you pricked the grasshopper and tried to dissect it. And so you gave the pain to that grasshopper, and so you need to undergo the same pain. See, the logic is the same. We may think that, oh, there is a mosquito, just, put it in between our thing and smash it and it is dead. But the pain that the mosquito undergoes, that much pain, it will come back to us, whatever we do. So then this Muni argued that, when we are less than 5 or 8, I believe, I'm not exactly sure, whatever we do, that the senses are not developed, the intelligence is not developed, the mind is not developed. So whatever is done without the full knowledge and control. So how can you punish me? So can you please mute yourself?
Next time, okay.
Okay. So the king, so the Muni said that since as a child I did not know what I'm doing, I'm not due to the punishment. So since you gave me this punishment without considering all these factors, you have to be born as a Shudra, although you're highly learned. So that was the birth of Vidura. And without Vidura, the Pandavas couldn't have survived at all. In fact, Yamaraj was a great devotee of the Lord, and he wanted to take part in the pastimes of the Lord as Vidura, and that's why this happened. But this gives a clue of what karma is, and it's not fallible. There is no flaw anywhere. It is like, I heard in a lecture that if you are from Mumbai or if you're from India, this dabba walas. I don't know if they are still there now, but it was very famous before the cafeteria, the eating out started. So the dabba walas transport 1 million or more dabbas from the house to the office. And their system, they don't have any computer, hardly they're literate also. But the margin of error is 1 in million. And we saw that many you know, famous people have visited them, and if you Google and see a documentary, you can see that the system is perfect. There is no possibility of error. You will not get a box that is made by somebody else's wife. If you get that, that means you're done. So they are so if the dabba walas with no computer and nothing can create such a path, that too in the, you can know the trains in Mumbai, the crowd, and I mean combinations of anything could happen anywhere, the thing reach on time, the correct dabba. Then what about the supreme controllers? I mean controllers, how would they make a mistake? So it's all perfect. So this is, there are three kinds of activities according to the different modes of material nature. When we are in the mode of goodness, what activity we do, and when we are in the mode of passion, and when we are in the mode of ignorance. Similarly, there are three kinds of eatables also. There are some things that are classified as being in the mode of goodness, that develop the mode of goodness. Some would develop the mode of passion. Some would make us move into the mode of ignorance more. So, and Vedic literature is meant for human beings, not for animals. Why should we know about karma and the three kinds of material nature? So that we know by action we can introspect ourselves, whether I was in goodness, I was in passion, or I was in ignorance, and by my effort and practice of devotional service, whether I am going transcending the modes or going down the modes. So one may argue that animals can kill other animals. So a tiger cannot drink the juice of the grass, or it cannot eat grass for its, even if it's hungry, it has to kill an animal. So the carnivorous animals have to kill the herbivorous animals, and that's how the cycle is. But the man's food is plants. That is how the man is designed. You see, we don't have claws. There are 4 teeth, and every rest there are more molar teeth than canine teeth. And so all this plus so many other, the structure of the internal organs show that our body is designed for eating plant food. But if the man eats animals for the sake of uncontrolled taste, then we are responsible for breaking the laws of nature, and then we need to take the result of it. So why Gita is saying all this? Finally, if we properly utilize the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, then our whole life will become purified. That is the goal. Application of these is a goal, and by application our life is purified, and we know what to do, what not to do. And ultimately, not only purified and stay here, but then ultimately we will be able to reach the destination which is beyond the material sky, where we belong. So what is the purpose? Throughout the introduction, many different places Srila Prabhupada says, what is the purpose of Bhagavad Gita? What is the effect of reading Bhagavad Gita? The purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to deliver mankind from the nescience of material existence. Nescience means ignorance. We are like, groping in dark. If everything in dark and if there is no light, then you don't know why you are born, what you are doing, where you are going, what you should act. But Bhagavad Gita is like torchlight, bringing us illumination in our lives. So Srila Prabhupada writes, every man is in difficulty in so many ways. As Arjuna was also in difficulty in having to fight the battle of Kurukshetra, Arjuna surrendered unto Sri Krishna, and consequently this Bhagavad Gita was spoken. This we saw in the last class, how Arjuna was not able to make a definitive solution until he was speaking to Krishna as though he was his friend. But once he surrendered, everything was clear to him. So how does this apply to us? Not only Arjuna, but every one of us is full of anxieties because of this material existence. Because the nature of material existence is to give us anxieties. Can we all say that? I mean, of course, there are periods where we were without anxiety, but again something else came. again something else will come in the future. This coronavirus, even if they find out the vaccine, and we can't relax now again, there is such a scare, such a thing, something else. So that is the nature of this material existence, because our very existence is in the atmosphere of non-existence. It's incompatible like oil and water. So actually, we are not meant to be threatened by non-existence, because the basic nature of the living entity or us is we live forever. Our existence is eternal, but somehow or other we are put into asat. Asat refers to that which does not exist. Everything else in this world, including our body, is constantly changing. So when we were born, the set of people we were with is not the same set of people we are with now. And we don't know when we leave this body, what are the set of people we are with. When we were born, that like Srila Prabhupada writes in his Vrindavan Bhajan, where is my auntie and uncle, my mother and father, my grandfather and grandmother, and all the nieces and nephews, where are all of them now? Then I had my own family. Then when the family, when the kids get and they go out, where are we? So the point is, everything is constant flux, and Bhagavad Gita gives us a knowledge to see that it is in constant flux. So Bhagavad Gita starts with the inquiry of Dhritarashtra. He's asking, that we will see in the next class, the overview of the 18 chapters. But in the chapter 18, the last verse is text 78. But this is just, what is the result of hearing the Bhagavad Gita? Sanjaya said. Basically, Sanjaya is a chariot driver of Dhritarashtra. And Dhritarashtra is asking to Sanjaya, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do? And Sanjaya explains what happened to Arjuna and what was the conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. And finally, the closure of Bhagavad Gita is also Sanjaya's ultimate shlokas, or what he said. Can anyone read this? So there are 4 texts, 74 to 78.
Hare Krishna Mataji, can I read?
Yeah, please go ahead, Mata.
Sanjaya said, thus, have I heard the conversation of 2 great souls, Krishna and Arjuna, and so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end. Text 1 or all, Mataji?
Yeah, all.
Okay, text 75. By the mercy of Vyasa, I have heard these most confidential talks directly from the master of all mysticism, Krishna, who was speaking personally to Arjuna. Text 76. O King, as I repeatedly recall this wondrous and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I take pleasure being thrilled at every moment. Text 77. O King, as I remember the wonderful form of Lord Krishna, I am struck with wonder more and more, and I rejoice again and again. Text 78. I like this verse so much, Mataji.
Yeah.
Wherever there is Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, and extraordinary power and morality. That is my opinion.
Thank you, Mataji, for reading so beautifully. So we can see how Sanjaya is so wonderstruck, is awestruck. I mean, he's saying repeatedly that I've heard from him directly, and when I recall this, it gives me so much joy. I take so much pleasure. It's thrilling me at every moment, and I rejoice again and again. I'm struck with wonder more and more, and the wonderful form of Krishna is full of wonder. See, he's having such an experience that he's falling short of words to explain that. So that is a result of someone who is in touch with Bhagavad Gita. And finally, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, master of all mystics, Yogeshwara Krishna is there. Yatra Partho Dhanurdaraha, son of Partha, one who is Dhanurdara, who is a supreme archer. Wherever there is Arjuna, what will be there? Tatra Shri Vijayo Bhutir Dhruva Nitir. So Shri is opulence, Vijaya is victory, Dhruva is certainly, Bhuti is extraordinary power, and morality is Niti. And that is my opinion. So he is giving the Phala Shruti that if we sincerely and seriously read Bhagavad Gita, not only read for one day, but keep reading it throughout our life, then we are blessed with all this, treasures, which we cannot get from anywhere in this world. So basically, Bhagavad Gita will make you feel happy and fulfilled and be contented living in this world. Okay, so this is the end of the session 3. If anyone has any questions, comments, or corrections, please go ahead now. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
We can take questions from the adults, from the newcomers, or even practicing devotees. Whoever would like to ask questions, they can ask questions. It's open for discussion.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you so much for the class.
Hare
Krishna Mataji. Mataji, one question. Last week you mentioned we give lot of importance to the minute problems, and what is a big problem we don't care. So sometimes we know that the problem is not important, but mind keep on thinking about it. So how can we address that? The second question is just now we discussed about the karma that we do, whether we know or we don't know. When we perform, when we did that activity, we have to take the result. Accidentally we do so many mistakes, the mosquitoes we kill just like that. When it bites, we just hit and it will die. So many things we do, Mataji. How can we address that?
Yeah, thank you, Prabhuji, for your question. So first is, we know that the problem is small, but the mind keep dwelling in that. So how to address that? So that is why the mind needs training. First of all, Bhagavad Gita gives us the intelligence about what? That we have the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Controller, who is our well-wisher, always with us. And then it is said that there is no problem that he would not give us a problem that is more difficult for us to handle. As much as the example given is that a mother spanking the child, or giving him a timeout or something, say some punishment to the child. But the punishment could be, stay in the timeout, stay out in the bathroom for 10 minutes, or you don't get your favorite food, or maybe you skip one meal. But the mother or the parents would not give the child punishment beyond the capacity for the child to tolerate. So similarly, the Lord is also like that. So first we have this strongly in our mind that even whatever problem I have, the Lord is there, and He is with me, and He will give me intelligence to handle that. So that is on the intellectual level. But on the actual level, even though you may intellectually convince yourself, yes, while we hear a lecture from Prabhupada, yeah, that is true. But then when we are back again with the problem, then the problem starts nagging. That's why we need practice. So Prabhupada says that apart from sense control and apart from strengthening the intelligence, the mind also needs to practice connecting with the Supreme Lord. So that happens by chanting. So that is why it is good that early in the morning, before our mind is getting disturbed and distracted by so many things, we offer our mind, intelligence, body and words in the Lord's service and ask Him, please engage me in service more. So that is the Mahamantra's meaning. So when we chant the Mahamantra, and in this way we strengthen the mind slowly and slowly. And then what happens is, over a period of time, when the mind goes to the problem again, automatically we would, the intelligence would say that, no, this is not something that is difficult for me to handle. Krishna will take care. And not that all problems can be solved immediately, because there is time, right? We see that how in the Samudra Manthan, the Lord told the Devas that the time is not suitable to you, so you have to make truce with the demons. Now, whatever you do, you cannot win. So like that way, eventually, by the passage of time, the problem will go away. So one is intellectually understanding that no problem is very difficult for me to handle, and second is taking instructions from Bhagavad Gita, and a third and the most important thing is engaging the mind in a positive mantra meditation every day. So by the strength of that, then we can keep the mind from thinking about that again and again. So the second question is, what do we do with things like mosquitoes and other bugs? So as much as possible, we see that we don't commit unnecessary violence. Like I have seen in the temple that when there is this huge spider, okay, so what they do is they take the spider in the box and then they go and put the spider outside. So if that is possible, we can do. But if it is like it's too difficult and it's impossible. Even cockroaches can also be dealt like that, or any other bug or anything. So basically we try to understand that the soul is present in everything, and we don't unnecessarily harm any living entity as much as possible. If it is not possible, if we harm, then we get proportionate reaction to that. It may not be so much, but still we get proportionate reaction to that. So we can yeah, this is an interesting thing that happened in Sandy Ridge. I think Lavanya Mataji was also there. It's a temple and it's in a I don't know, she's not there in the call now. So we both were there, and it's in the remote in the community in the woods. So we put the we left the chapel and we went inside the temple, and while coming out of to put the chapel, we found a huge black snake. That's it. We both ran, and then we didn't know what to do. Then we called that one Shivananda Prabhu. So Shivananda Prabhu said, "Oh, the black snake, yeah, I know that. He used to be here around. He was inside that generator room. He wouldn't do anything much." And we were surprised. I mean, we don't know, I don't know if he knows whether it's poisonous or not, but he was not afraid of the snake. So actually the snake had eaten something and he couldn't move, but it was a huge little, scary snake, and it was right near where we left our slippers. But Prabhu had no fear. He in fact went, and then he took our slippers and he said that, don't trouble the snake, it will go on its own. You can take your slipper and you can go to your city. So the point is, I mean, at least that is something that we saw it, and I saw him also, he has a box and a cover that he would take the spider and go and throw it out. So we can see that the rishis and munis, they were in harmony with nature. And also I read in the Ocean of Mercy book by our dear Bhakti Charu Maharaj. So he had written that in the early days of Mayapur, that there were so many snakes, so many cobras and vipers, and they were living in the almost in the in that hut, and they used to use the toilet in the mud only, and to go to the pump to take a bath and to go use the toilet in the early morning at 3:30. It was really every step they had to watch. But what he said was, there was no instance that, and once one devotee got very desperate and he killed 50 snakes. And in fact, in Mayapur, when we were walking, thousands of people were walking, there was a snake that crossed, and I would have almost stepped on that if my friend didn't pull me off from putting the thing. But there are so many, but still what he mentions in the book is not even one person had there is no instance that they had bitten anyone so far. So the point is, there Paramatma is inside them also, and they don't unnecessarily trouble until we go in their way. So my answer is, Prabhuji, as much as possible, we remain to be non-violent, and then yeah, if it is not possible, if there is too much of a rat or mosquitoes, they are eating prasadam, then I have seen Maharaja's advice that you use the spray, but basically they say that keep the place clean so that these things won't come. Is that okay, Prabhuji?
No, thank you so much, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mataji, there was a temple. Hare Krishna, Mataji. This is Abhiram Sakadas.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
In one of the temples, they had some infection about roaches and cockroaches and things like that. And then the devotee went and asked Prabhupada that, what can we do with this? Prabhupada said, you are not cleaning your kitchen properly, and that's why they are here. If you clean your kitchen properly, they should not be inside.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for adding that. Yeah. Okay, so any other questions?
Mataji, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So let's say an individual has committed a sin without knowing it, like unconsciously. Do we still get the same like karma, or do we still get the same punishment as like doing it like consciously, or it doesn't matter? If you do it, you're gonna get the same result?
No, actually there is a difference in the punishment for that. That's what I've heard, because unknowingly doing something, that means you don't, but unknowingly or knowingly you touch the fire will burn. That's the result of karma, whether you do, but how much the suffering, that may vary according to what you know, and in spite of knowing everything you committed, definitely it is much more than when you commit the sin without knowing. And that's what I've heard, Mataji.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the question. Okay, anybody else has any questions?
Hare Krishna, Mataji, I have a question. So, as you said about karma today, like everyone has to go with karma, like whether if it's like bad or good. Like let's say if a person did something good, but like that person still has to go with like bad stuff. That person still has to suffer, right? So like karma is not always good and not always bad. It's just good, bad, good, bad.
Yeah, right. But Bhagavad Gita gives you a trick of how to, even if you have done sinful actions, even knowingly or unknowingly, there is a way to get out of the reaction.
Okay.
Yeah, so we will learn that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Okay, anybody else? Any other question? Okay, so we can end the call.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks to everyone.
Thank you.
Now, one more thing is that I request all of you to go through the introduction of this book. So we almost covered the most basic things that is present in the introduction in 3 sessions. Now, if you go through the introduction, which is it's very, very interesting thing. So many things are told in the introduction. We just tried to cover an overview of it. So if you read that, it will make more sense. Then we can go in depth in the coming classes about the various topics and shlokas in the Bhagavad Gita. And if you don't have a book, please write to us and we can send you a copy.
Thank you, Lalitangi Gopi, Koti Koti Dandat Pranam to your association. Hari Hari Gauranga.
Thank you, Mataji. Your
so many things
so
learning
inspiring.
from you.
Thank
Day
you so
by
much.
day, correcting us, guide us, inspiring us.
Oh no. No, you are actually guiding us, Mataji. Thank you so much. Okay, so maybe we'll end the call.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare
Very
Krishna.
nice class, Mataji.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Mataji.
Mataji. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Yeah,
Hare
it's a very basic level class. Thank you so much for all of you for attending. So maybe we'll end the call. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai.
Jai.
Jai Prabhupada. Jai.
Mataji, where can should I text you on the chat for the book? Because
Yes.
Okay.
Are you in the WhatsApp group?
Oh, I think one of them for 18 and above.
Are you there in the WhatsApp group?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe you can text us in the group.
Phone number also in the chat, Mataji. We can get that number from there.
Okay, yeah. Then we will contact you.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Pavanebhyo Vaishnava. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jai. Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
so much, Mataji.
Krishna Mata.
Hare Krishna.